So we looked last time at kind of the second original experience humanity has from its beginning. We saw, of course, original solitude. But we also saw that original unity. That though humanity has a uniqueness among the creatures, that this human being is not meant to be so alone as to not be joined with anyone else. Hence that progression from the solitude into the unity. How is it, though, that this unity is meant to be lived out? It is meant to be lived out, to be experienced in a particular way. It is known as the nuptial mystery. It is the mystery of giving ourselves to each other. But then what we will ultimately call marriage. That's where nuptial comes from. We need to understand how this nuptial mystery is lived out in order to better understand the unity towards which we are called, at least in the original sense. What is a contract? Anybody, what's a contract? Nobody made you guess? Yes?
Like an agreement between two people.
Okay. Anything more to it? You're on the right track, don't get me wrong. It is an agreement usually between two parties or usually two people. What is the focus of the contract? What does it concern? Let me ask, how many of you actually own your phone? How many of you are making payments on your phone? A couple of you? Are you not under a contract because of that? A contract is an agreement between two parties, usually concerning goods. So in the example of a cell phone, most of us cannot normally, if we want the nicest, the newest, the fanciest smartphone, we normally cannot afford that right away. $800, $1,000, or more than $1,000. Most of us don't normally carry that cash around. So we normally sign a contract. We sign a contract that says we will provide 2 years worth of payments. That's usually what it is. And at the end of that 2 years, if we have been faithful in making our payments, the phone will be ours. And the contract will have reached its conclusion. Sometimes it can be for services as well. Hence we have contractors, right? I don't believe most of us have the skill to be able to build our own houses. So we sign contracts with individuals who can. that if they do such and such work, we will compensate them for that work, or we may exchange perhaps. Normally it's just we exchange money for services. The nuptial mystery, though, cannot be understood in the terms of a contract. First of all, it's definitely not an exchange of goods. Man and the woman do not exchange goods. Or that's not the primary purpose. At times they may. Nor is it merely an exchange of services. Some will try to reduce marriage to this reality. Well, it is merely an exchange of services. A tit for tat thing. You do this, I do that. Or you do these things, I will do these things. But that is not what marriage is concerned about. That is not its primary goal. It is more in the original mindset and even now in the perspective of a covenant. Now, these two are similar in that they normally involve two parties. I mean, there could be more technically in a contract, but normally it's two. Whereas, though, a contract is normally an exchange of goods or services, a covenant is an exchange or a gifting of persons. We could say that in a covenant, then, that when one enters into a covenant, one gives of their entire self to the other. Hence, in the Christian terms, why we talk about and focus on this sort of language and talking about what God does with humanity. That God enters into a covenant with humanity, not a contract. Oh, if you'll just perform these basic things of worship, I'll provide grace or mercy, whatever you want. It is far deeper than that. It is an exchange, a gifting of the whole person, giving completely of themselves. So the focus here is on gift. Whereas inside the contract, you could say it's more of purchase. A gift is something that is freely given, freely offered. In a sense, something we're not bound to. Whereas a purchase is only acquired because we exchange it for something else, usually money, right? Probably most of the things that we have purchased rather than been given. Maybe, depends on your family, depends on your circumstances, of course. But marriage at the heart of it is it's not a purchase. It's not the purchase of a person or the purchase of privileges. Especially, of course, not sexual purchase. It is a total gift of the self. a gift given and a gift received. Our book, in talking about all this, highlights a story about two things that are given. One is money. The other is a rose. Money is, of course, the more practical gift, because then I can give it out I can do with it whatever I want. The rose, though, is different. The rose does not, in a sense, have as much of a practical value. But it is still to be treasured more. It has more meaning, more significance. Right? Hence why people appreciate more, let's be honest, we appreciate more when we're actually given something rather than just given cash. It's very easy, though, to give cash, isn't it? Whether actual cash or gift cards. It's very easy to do that. But it is more meaningful when we actually give something. Maybe we don't like the gift. I'm not saying that means it's 100% great in that context. But it's more meaningful. It's more significant. It is the case, the same sort of case, in that true understanding of the nuptial mystery that leads toward marriage. It is not meant merely for the satisfaction of a desire. Some will try to say that's all marriage is. All marriage is just the sanctification of sex. No, it's far more than that, far deeper, far more significant than that. Hence why it is right to say that one should be more concerned about entering into marriage than just merely having proper or rightly oriented conjugal acts. It is a covenant. It is a gift of self. And this gift of self is not merely some aspect of the person, some part of them. It is a gift of all that they are, of all that they have. To receive completely who they have been created to be. Yes, flaws and all, the warts and the moles, and all of that. At least perhaps in a spiritual sense, maybe in a physical sense, who knows? But this original unity that was established for humanity, that is found in the nuptial mystery, emphasizes the great nuptial meaning of creation, the universe, everything. It ultimately points not towards the unity merely within humanity, but it actually points to a unity that points us outward, upward. ultimately to God. Why? Because our very existence is a gift. Our very existence is a gift. Some will try to postulate that God, the divine being, needs humanity in order to exist. No. The Catholic understanding of who and what God is perfect. The original meaning of perfect means to have been completely made or completely finalized. To say something is perfect was to say it does not need anything more. It's finished. It has been made, it has been worked through completely. It needs no updates. It needs no revisions. It needs no fixing. So God is perfect. God does not need anything more outside of God's very being. All that God has, all that God needs, is found within himself. So the very fact that we exist is because it is a gift given to us from God. A gift we ultimately say is done out of love. That is the ultimate motivation why anything exists. It is done out of divine love for us. So already in a way, there is already a covenantal relationship between God and humanity. God giving us ourselves. We in turn are called to give that gift in our own way, in the way possible, back to God. And yet the encounter with the other human in the nuptial mystery kind of amplifies that reality. It amplifies it and in a sense, re-echoes it. Re-echoes the reality that all that we have is gift. Gift received or gift given. So this reality of marriage then is meant to be lived out in this gift-giving relationship, this covenantal relationship. There's been the popular phrase, a recent phrase come into vogue. I won't say necessarily popular, but come into vogue. Friends with benefits. And say, oh, we're just good friends. We do a little bit more every now and then. That's more of a contractual relationship right there. Just an exchange of services. It's not gift giving. It's just you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Scratch elsewhere, we're not going to talk about that. This is also how we define what prostitution is. It is the contractualization of the nuptial mystery. I provide you specific services, sexual services, in exchange for goods, usually money. Both of these, as I said, both of these do not reflect that original nuptial mystery. Because ultimately it's meant to be a gift that is to be treasured, a gift that is to be enjoyed. How many of you ever seen or read the play Our Town? A couple of you? Thornton Wilder? It's a very simple play. Just talking, a kind of modern type of play with very little stage decoration or stage setup. So asks you to kind of use your imagination a little bit for houses in the village or whatnot. The play ends in the town cemetery. It ends with one of the characters' deaths. I won't say who. My hair spoils.
No, I'm just saying.
It's drawing emotions from you guys.
We'll just say that we have to play the dead person in the end. It's a very long, boring show.
Okay. It's a different way to think about it. But so ending in the cemetery, having the dead talking with each other. And one of them brings up this line talking about how the gift of life is unrecognized or wasted on the living. The gift of life seems to be unrecognized, or more precisely, wasted on the living. It is often the case that especially in the sinful reality that we encounter now, gifts are not truly recognized and appreciated as they should be, as they are supposed to be. How many of the gifts that you got at Christmas, I'm not talking necessarily this year, just any point in Christmas, usually. How many of them did you enjoy after a month? How many of them did you enjoy after a year? There may be some, but it's probably not the majority of the gifts you received throughout the entirety of your life, is it? If you look back. Between toys, between clothes, between maybe things for the hobbies that we like, there probably are some. I hope there are some, because otherwise, ooh. But there probably are a good portion, perhaps even the majority, that you don't appreciate really anymore, let alone appreciate that far after the event. The gift of the self is one that can often be unappreciated in many ways in the modern understanding of marriage or the nuptial mystery, which is the conjugal act. But yet it is still there in all of it. There is still the desire to be appreciated. And the desire to appreciate the other. Why? Because this is one of the most intimate moments a human being can experience. And yet, at times, we can confuse the two. A good philosopher talking about these things said, in America anymore, we confuse the meanings or the understandings of sex and money. We treat sex like money because we treat it merely as a means of exchange. And we treat money like sex because we expect our money to get pregnant and to reproduce. This is not merely a means of just exchange or a random encounter. There is far more and far deeper that happens. In fact, they talk about the sexual act, especially kind of the first time, as having a sort of imprinting effect on the person. Now, the studies that say this happens more, not exclusively, more in the female psychology than the male psychology. That there is some sort of imprinting. Which they say is what makes it so hard to split up or to break apart those whom we first do this with. In a natural sense, reflecting the true understanding of this as gift. A gift not to be thrown around lightly or easily. but a gift to be given by one who truly and completely appreciates it, respects it, treasures it, enjoys it in the proper way, in the proper understanding. And yet we see too often, as I have seen it merely in this more modern context, it's not harmful, it's not bad, it's fine to, do it with as many as you can, as many as you want. And yet how many there are who are hurt because of this appreciation of it only as purchase or merely exchange. Rather than the complete acceptance and reception of a gift. And of the whole person, by the way, as well. Remember, we are bodies, we have bodies, we are bodies, but we are also souls. We are embodied souls or ensouled bodies. We are both, not one over the other, not one opposite the other. The body is kind of the physical manifestation of the soul. The soul is that which animates the body. We are human because we have both. But when we reduce the nuptial mystery down to just a purchase or an exchange, we reduce ourselves merely to being bodies. And all we are bodies that merely experience certain phenomena, certain hormonal or chemical responses to stimuli. And some will say our purpose is to have to find and to enjoy the most pleasant of those stimuli that give us the pleasure-inducing responses. And yet that denies the totality of ourselves. Denies that we are animated and souled. That we are to give that gift in the other, to the other. This is, of course, also why this seems to be something that needs to be exchanged, or rather to be gifted to another. Hence, the rebuking of the idea of self-pleasure in this particular context. Masturbation. Why? Because this gift is meant to be enjoyed with another, to be completely given in another. This makes it selfish. It cuts us off from the other. It also, more often than not, draws us into a false reality. of making our own ideal. This is what will satisfy me. This is what will please me. Instead of receiving the gift of the other, flaws and all, we are human, we have flaws, we all do. But it pushes away that ability to see the other and merely pursues our own selfish inclinations. Normally, especially in these days, fueled by the media that we see. Especially, of course, pornography. The overabundance of that. Instead of being open to receiving that which is the other, that we cut ourselves off. But we are not created for that. We are not created merely to stimulate the body. There is a deeper yearning, a deeper longing within ourselves. A longing to give, a longing to receive. So we are not created for an individual existence, an existence so individual that it becomes a different type of solitude. No, we are not created for this type of unity with other creatures, with really any type of unity other than perhaps the most basic unity of existence. We are created for unity within ourselves. And the full sort of physical manifestation of this unity is in that nuptial mystery. In that gift that is offered, in that gift that is received. Because ultimately, we see in that the greater reflection of the unity of God and humanity. In at least the original context, as I said before, of the gift of existence that God gives to humanity, the gift of reverence, respect, obedience, and praise that humanity is called to give back to God. And this is there from the beginning. The end of Genesis chapter 2. Actually, chapter 1, I think. One of the creation accounts. God tells humanity. God says, be fruitful and multiply. Be fruitful and multiply. Having care over all of these other things. The way we are fruitful is in that offering of that gift. Because it opens us up for further gifts. Ultimately, the gift of the gift of life. The great poet Milton, in his epic poem, Paradise Lost, highlights some of this in the midst of the creation of the universe, the creation of the angels, the separation of the angels, and the creation of earth and humanity. And he writes in there about this exchange of self between the first man and the first woman, between Adam and Eve. In a very sort of poetic way, of course, not in a very erotic or lewd way, but in a very poetic way. About them exchanging them, giving this exchange, this true gift of the exchange of gifts, not exchange of services. He writes about it in the sense of this being seen by Lucifer, by the fallen devil, who is encountering all this and trying to plot his supposed revenge. And Milton writes about how this seems to almost move Lucifer. Almost seems to move Lucifer to change his plan. It's only perhaps in our modern way that we see this in sort of two ways. We see it as the all in all, as the greatest, or as the most important, as the only perhaps good thing that one can experience, or to see it as something that is immensely gross, immensely disturbing, or immensely disgusting. Something only to be endured for at least the propagation of the species. So kind of the two extremes. Either it's everything, or it's so little as to almost be nothing. And I think these are very much highlighted anymore, both of them in American society. And in many ways, we still remain rather prudish in comparison to much of the rest of the world's attitudes. But at the same time, very libertine in seeing it as still in some ways the all in all. What to be pursued and what's to be desired. There are many that it falls in between. And falls back to this original sort of understanding as gift. Not something greater than that, but not lesser than that. We too need to truly appreciate and to understand what this nuptial mystery is. So that we may not abuse it or to degrade it to something less than what it is. We'll see that more when we discuss that in the specific confines of marriage in the next class. Questions, thoughts, comments? Any of that so far? Clear and understood? So for next class, we're going to be looking at this as meant to be lived out in the Christian understanding. We'll look at it overall, but especially in the Christian understanding of marriage. Of what is marriage? What do we mean by marriage? What is the goal, the purpose of marriage? And how is it that we can degrade or even lose that understanding based upon how we define or understand marriage? So we're going to look at that in particular through a specific document issued in the 60s. A document called Humane Vitae, or Concerning or About Human Life, which looks at this understanding of marriage and looks at some of the consequences of some of the things that are advocated to be done, even in some cases inside of marriage. So as to see what is the purpose of marriage, what is the goal, especially the twofold goal of marriage, and how that can be disrupted in some of the modern ways that are being advocated for. So there will be a link on Canvas to this document. It's not very long. It's probably shorter than the chapters I've been having you read in the Call to Love book. So read up on that, have that prepared. We'll discuss that. We'll discuss that more next class. Nothing else. I bid you adieu. Have a good Wednesday. Make it through hump day. All right.